Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for being here this afternoon. As most of you know, I'm Dr. Zaharopoulos Provost, and it is my honor and privilege today to introduce our event and our speaker in celebration of the National and International Day of People with Disabilities. We have our colleague, Dr. Eleftheria Bernidaki-Aldous-New, as our presenter. As you know, she has been at Discrimination for a while, since 1992. You have a summary of her CV in front of you, so I won't go over that, but I do want to say that she's been a professor of classics since 1992. Of course, her societal contribution also extended to her stint as a member of Parliament, where she took up the causes of people with disabilities. She is now serving as a senior advisor on diversity and equal opportunity to the President, and we're delighted about that. The topic that we cover today, in celebration of National and International Day of People with Disabilities, which is both the European Union and the UN Day, Global Day. The topic generally is the new legal culture and best practices against discrimination. Of course, there is no more credible source to discuss that than our colleague, Dr. Bernidaki. So, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Provost Zaharopoulos, and if I miss out on any other of our leaders of the college, VP Andreu and Principal Julius from Peers, and whoever else is here, and thank you for coming. And I want to especially thank the Office of Events that they went all out to prepare this in very difficult times with many, many things happening. And I really want to thank all of you people who have come either from the campus or while we have to prepare for your exams and to register, and those who came off campus especially. We're a good group to make the significant contribution to the day. And I would also want to bring the greetings of two friends of mine. They belong to different political parties, I have to say, but they're childhood friends from the School for the Blind when we were in elementary school. One is Panagiotis Kourouplis, the super minister of 5 ministries. I don't know which the titles of all of them are. He would be, he wanted to be here so strongly that he didn't even cancel to the last minute. But he has been to our college before, so we know that he will be supporting our private education endeavor here. Also, the other person was to come, which was Marta Kastanis, who is the president of the National Confederation of the Organizations of Associations and of People with Disability of Greece, but he is also the president of the European Disability Forum, EDF, and he's also the president of the IDA, the International Disability Alliance. I don't have any bias for people who are blind, but so both of them are blind. Now, I have to begin breaking the misconceptions that people have sometimes about disability. Disability is not one thing. It's not one kind of disability, and those people who have the education and the mental ability to function in spite of disability work for all of all kinds of disability. So the Confederation, who is led by the blind president Marta Kastanis for years, who has become recognized worldwide for his work, is also advocating the rights of people who are not able to speak for themselves, at least in a literal sense, the deaf or the mentally, the people with problems of that involve in intellectual abilities, such as people who are mentally retarded or people with psychological problems. The range covers all forms of disabilities seen and not seen. However, this day, every year, December 3rd, is a national and international day to celebrate disability, not in the sense that we should all become disabled to be celebrating the good luck or whatever else, but to acknowledge the importance of the fact that about 13 to 15% of all people in Europe are with a serious disability, and about many thousands and millions of people are to a degree or other with disabilities. The terminology is one thing. We don't say people that are disabled, because people are not like vehicles out of function, but they have a disability, so we have to name it, blind, deaf, whatever it is, and we have to acknowledge its existence. But we also have to acknowledge that these people continue to be human beings, and the new message, we're trying to pass it from year to year. Things happen slowly. It takes about 20 years, they say, for any new idea to catch. Since 1990, the new big change has occurred with the Americans with Disabilities Act, and I had the opportunity to work towards that piece of legislation that changed the life of many Americans, but also by extension influenced the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability that was ratified by Europe in 2010, but was voted by the General meeting of the UN in 2006. It moved slowly. The first unanimous voting by the UN in New York happened in December 2006. The signing into the agreement happened in Europe in 2008, and the ratification happened in 2010 for Europe. It was announced in a very cheerful way. The great new message, therefore, in the new legal culture, I have to say that up front before I tell you more about what I've jotted down for you today, is that the question now revolves around human rights. Why do I say that, or why do we say that, or why does the movement of people with disabilities and the world policies focus on that issue? Is because normally, and for a long time, many centuries, the emphasis and the approach towards issues of disability was from the point of view of philanthropy, of charity. Now, that doesn't mean that we don't allow human emotions. Not only we allow, we ask for true compassion and sympathy and understanding. But we first have to acknowledge that human beings continue to be human beings no matter what happens in terms of their bodily functions or other misfortunes that can happen in their life. So their rights are no different than anybody else's rights. So I'll try to explain some of those issues. So the title read as follows by the Human Rights Watch, as I will tell you when. EU, a commitment to disability rights. EU ratifies Integrational Treaty, first intergovernmental group to join December 30, 2010. That was European Union as a union ratifying the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability. The European Union's ratification of the major integrational strategy and treaty on disability rights is a significant milestone in the global effort to promote the rights of people with disabilities. Human Rights Watch said. So the emphasis is on the rights. Now, today, each year there is a theme that is promoted from the point of view of the UN regarding this day. The theme today on the International Day of Persons with Disability is Inclusion Matters, Access and Empowerment of People of All Abilities. Now, this is not a wishful, how can I say, of all abilities does not mean that we do not acknowledge the word disability. We use that legally, that's a word that is true, but also we should not forget that there is abilities in spite of the form of limitations that any given disability may bring. So inclusion, but to have inclusion, you have to have true understanding of the true condition of the various disabilities, and you have to have information so that the ultimate goal is to abolish, eventually, discrimination. The European disability, I threw some terms to you then, rights, human rights, UNCRPD, United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disability, and now I'm going to refer to another term, the European Disability Strategy, proposed by the European Commission. It is to cover the years 2010-2020, and now we have a new addition to it, 2020-2030, so they plan ahead. That's why we call it strategy. The provost must know that idea. And there was an updated form of it, 2015-2020. Well, this European Commission deals with issues of employment. It's called actually European Commission, Employment, Social Affairs, and Equal Opportunities. I will come to that. Sorry, don't be scared. And there is also the European Commission on the European Commissioner on Justice, Fundamental Rights and Citizenship have been working on this, and I'm referring to those terms because from now on, these are the point of reference for Greece too. I have to acknowledge that things happen very slowly, but finally, although the UN CRPD was, as I said, voted by the UN in 2006, it was ratified by Europe in 2010. It was finally ratified by Greek Hellenic Parliament in 2012. So when a country ratifies and signs into these principles to become laws of the UNCRPD and its optional protocol, then this is a new legal obligation of the country. This was passed by the Greek law 4074 in 2012, and this gives the right to any individual with disability to file complaints with the committee, the European Committee monitoring the implementation of the UNCRPD, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of People with Disability. So, the good news is that Greece has joined, both in principle and by legislation, the family of the European nations and the UN in all advanced policies and practices. And I will tell you right up front so you don't wonder what you know to be the truth. You know that things are not perfect or not right. And how does that relate to these obligations by law? It is exactly the cry of the UN celebration on the Day of People with Disability today to implement the laws and to take action according to this new acknowledgement of the human rights of persons with disabilities. Parenthesis. You know that today there are many, I think there are many demonstrations. There have been more of people with disability on November 4th. There was a big protest on the part of the people working for the mental hospital of Bernidaki-Aldous-New on November 26th. And there have been demonstrations by the parents and teachers of children that need special education in October. So, there are tons of problems, and as you saw mentioned in my title, in the context of crisis, economic crisis, this is a big issue. So, the most important thing to remember, if I confuse you with some other details, is that there is a huge gap, as always, between theory and practice. The new mandate is to remember to implement the laws, and the role of our institution, which through its history has been rather pioneer in taking social action and doing things that precede its times, in spite of our many problems and shortcomings. Our institution does exactly what the UN mandate is for today, which is to involve academic institutions in this process, and something that concerns me a little bit, to leave a legacy, a lasting legacy. I will inevitably speak for myself here because I don't know how else I could tell some truths, but in the Greek Parliament I will tell you more about what we did for legislation, but in the American College of Greece I helped establish for the first time the Committee on Disability in 2009, and we have a lot of things to do. It's far from implementing all the rules and preambles that it's supposed to be abiding by, but at least we have that committee, and it will be a legacy left behind all of us here. I'm sure for as long as the college lives, it will continue to build on best practice regarding also the issue of disability. So I referred to the purpose of my presentation already, but I think it is time to explain the meaning of my topic and of my aims, telos, both as a person interested in political and social developments, as a professional, member of the Hellenic Parliament, historian, classicist, as well as a person with a serious disability. Blindness. It's obvious to you, and most of you know me personally, but in a formal academic presentation I must mention it as part of the video. And why is this important? It is important because the best way to bring the news, to make the difference, is to expose society to people with disability that do things that are not expected of them by the majority of the people, to teach by example. That's why I thought it would be a beautiful, not just on a symbolic level, but it would be a truly meaningful thing to have here Mr. Bernidaki-Aldous-New and Mr. Kourouglis and myself. But so it happened that we have different party affiliations, but we were indeed playing in the same schoolyard of a closed school institution for the blind in Eleftheria as children. And as a matter of fact, well, I won't get into more personal information. My interest in this topic is both personal and professional, as I said, and has lasted for a lifetime, because I've been blind since the age of 3. I rounded up to 3. I was really 2 years and 4 months old. As a result of an accident, I will not even get into that, to say that it was a German hand grenade left after the war and after the Civil War, because I'm not that old. No. I have done all my studying and my work as a university professor and as a member of the Hellenic Parliament, fighting all along, are you ready? The discrimination that I confronted because of my blindness, more than the difficulties that blindness itself entails. I think now I'm old enough to be able to say some things without blushing, and if I want to help the legacy here be meaningful, I have to say this. Discrimination never dies away. It's a question of degree of how much discrimination and how much that discrimination prevents you from doing what you want to do. Therefore, and of course I would like to have this reduced for other people who may be in the same position or similar position. As I said, I happen to be blind, but that doesn't mean that we don't work for the rights of people with any other disability. And I hate to tell you this, but statistics say that almost everyone will be to a degree disabled by the time they die. In other words, first you get disabled, then you die normally. So the more you prepare society to accommodate your needs, if that happens, the more civilized the society is, but the better prepared you are to face your problems. It's an obvious thing, but I have to say it sometimes. Therefore, I must confess that my purpose in speaking to you today is not simply to give you some information on issues of equal opportunity and disability, special education, employment, health issues, but to inspire you and to integrate and to generate true interest in a topic that is not covered by the media enough or appropriately, that is the issue of discrimination against persons with disabilities. Διάκριση, ειδικά αρνητική διάκριση, discrimination. The harmful consequences on persons with disabilities which derive from negative attitudes and ignorance are too many and too serious that they cannot and should not be ignored. The main cause for discrimination is ignorance. That's a word I want you to remember if you forget everything else. Remember, discrimination and ignorance. Disability is a strange thing. It gives rise to the deepest compassion, sympathy, and should be intended, and to the greatest and unjustifiable fears, even disgust and abhorrence. Such negative feelings, attitudes, and even actions against persons with disabilities are generated from ignorance, most of the time. Ignorance of the true condition of disability. Sometimes this discrimination is generated by the personal problems of somebody who discriminates because of their own complex or, we'll call it issues, I suppose. But the majority of the people discriminate due to ignorance and not to malice. Lack of familiarity with people with disabilities, lack of knowledge of the many abilities and talents that are present in spite of disability give rise to bias and prejudice. True knowledge of important facts, acquaintance and familiarity with persons with disabilities may fight ignorance, the source of all evils, fears, prejudice, discrimination. It is only through learning more about what it is to live with a disability that will make legislators and politicians, decision makers of all kinds, employers, teachers, classmates, universities and colleges, colleagues, neighbors, more willing to accommodate and to accept as equal a person with disability. Prejudice and discrimination prevent people with disabilities to have equal opportunity in all areas of life, including education and employment, the most crucial. Equal opportunity in education, from kindergarten to universities, cannot exist if the system of education of any country or any state or any community, since today's UN celebration of disability do, is controlled by narrow-minded administrators, ignorant teachers and professors, uninformed classmates and parents, and so on. In short, if the person with disabilities or disability, together with having to fight against the adversities of disability on a daily basis, has to confront the ignorance of others who, due to their ignorance and prejudice, place barriers to her or his opportunity to live a meaningful life. Intended or not, with malice or without malice, remember the movie? Adverse discrimination, biases, prejudice, ignorance is certain to harm others, especially those least deserving. And nobody deserves to be punished more for having a disability with which one has to live than those people who have to endure that. And the only way you can sort of put yourselves in that position is if you, for a moment, think of how it would be to be in the position of a person with a certain disability. That is why I'm truly glad to be sharing my thoughts and my experiences with you today, and that is why I wish to thank all of you for being here, because you can spread the word when you're employers, when you meet your friends, when you know better. And I'm sure that the college will continue the tradition that we just recently started of having an organized form of addressing these issues. And I will be checking on you guys when I'm gone to see the progress with the UN Committee on Monitoring the laws that Greece voted. Of course, you don't have to worry too much that Greece quickly would implement those laws, so we can get away with some things for a while. But we're all going to work towards doing the right thing. How should persons with disability be treated? What should be done so as to allow them to enjoy equal opportunity, including topics on issues of disability in university learning, like ours, can enhance learning, can influence others, society at large, and decision makers. Acceptance of diversity should include persons with disabilities. Here I will say very quickly, something you all know. People, when they say diversity, they feel very happy about that. but they usually don't think of people with disabilities when they address the issues of diversity. That's a small note, you can research it further. You might be surprised, even shocked, to know that for the most part, any affirmative actions taken by colleges and universities, for example, by governments, by employers in general, everywhere, nationally in Greece or in European level, to achieve diversity and inclusion of others, of the other, do not include usually persons with disabilities. It is an ongoing struggle of the disability movement in Europe, but in the US as well, although they are way ahead of us with the Americans with Disabilities Act that was ratified in 1990 and put to full effect in 1992 and modified ever since almost every year. So everywhere it is hard to convince everybody, politicians, decision-making institutions and fora, including the European Commission, the European Courts, the European Council, the European Parliament, to include persons with disabilities in their workings and in their daily decisions. In the catalogue of those whose human rights should be respected, who should be given a fair chance to life, to equal opportunity for education and employment. I say education and employment more often than other things because without those, a person can hardly live anywhere a normal life or be part of a full member of a society. I will try to show why that is, why the largest and most ecumenical minority is so ignored. That minority is people with disability. The reasons are many. The majority of people over the centuries and across borders feel awkward and uncomfortable around or near people with disabilities, people who are somehow and obviously different. This is perhaps because they do not want to think the inevitable thought, that they too might somehow find themselves in the same or similar situation. This kind of realization of the human condition, I was surprised to see this all over the world today, as if they all knew the classics. This kind of realization of the human condition, that is, I define, that humans by definition are subject to, many of my students here, suffering and death. Is Mariana not here? No? Didn't matter. The humans by definition are subject to suffering and death led the ancient Greek thinkers to think human thoughts, mortal thoughts, τα θνητά φρονήν. As Heracles taught Admetus in the Alcestis of Euripides, a play that I recommend that all of you read if you want to understand some things about the human condition and the greatness of the Greek mind in continuing to teach humanity forever. They knew that the future was unknown and human fate common for all. Κοινή γάρ η τύχη και το μέλλον αβέβαιο. The Athenian state of the 5th century BC as a sophron polis. Its citizens were aware of the human condition. In other words, they knew that they were subject to suffering and death and they had to provide for their co-citizens equally subject to suffering and death. So the Athenian state in the 5th century BC had legislated pensions for disabled Athenians. See Lysias' Periadinatu, some of you studied that in high school, although I think that they're planning to abolish integrate from high schools now, I hope not. Homer, the tragedians, especially Sophocles, who was fascinated by the topic of blindness and disability in general, philosophers and the rhetoricians all had recognized the power of spirit and soul and mind in spite of physical disabilities. Insight in blindness, the blind seer and the blind poet, is a common motif in Greek literature. Such attitudes demonstrate recognition of strengths and abilities in people, even when afflicted with what they considered a savage disability, handicap, horrible fate, such as blindness, for example. The Greeks believed that the greatest poet, the founder of their culture, Homer, was blind. There is no time here to show you how this is so, and what the Greek tradition conveys about Homer, and what the international scholarship says about this. But I can assure you that we can draw from the ancient Greek thinkers many positive lessons regarding attitudes, policies, and practices relating to disability or handicaps. I have lectured on these topics, by the way, for many, I would say decades now, everywhere, from the US to Europe, universities, colleges, elementary schools, and so on. Internationally, this acknowledges a very valid topic. It's not my bias for Greek things. If we could put ourselves in the position of the other, as King Theseus did when he accepted the polluted and blind Oedipus in the Oedipus and Colonus of Sophocles, another play you must read sometime soon, we would react with humanity and sense. Did I say sense? I wondered why people, I heard someone already say, why do we say common sense when it is not so common? However, we do not have the time here to discuss how human psychology or sociology and traditions cause people to be prejudiced towards people with disabilities. Otherwise, we could stay here all day. I don't mind, actually. If any of you want to stay, we can go on. I will try to focus on the recent developments in Greece in relation to developments in Europe regarding initiatives for legislation and new policies, and how these are included by recent developments and are influenced, I meant to say, by recent developments of the economic crisis. I mentioned earlier the protests of various groups because of the economic crisis, special education, employment of people with disability, and other things that go by the window. Can I be heard? Will you hear me? Yes. We must move from theory to practice, not only in my presentation here. I know I also have to move along. When you're tired, you can walk out. Actually, don't you dare move. But especially concerning new laws and policies on issues of disability, and we must examine if and how they are implemented, the proposed. In Greece, no, I'm not implying anything for the proposal, but he discussed with me earlier how little implementation of laws happens in Greece. And I said it's a question of degree. Greece is in a lot of trouble about that, but unfortunately that is true everywhere in the world. It's a question of degree. Είναι θέμα βαθμού που λέω. In Greece, the phrase, are you ready? We need one law that would ensure that all laws are implemented is often heard. That's what the provost and I were discussing earlier. It is the fastest way of saying that even when we have good laws, they remain valid in theory and in principle, but they are not implemented. The force of law is not applied in such a way as to be effective and to have practical results for the everyday life of persons with disability in this case. The reasons for these are many. Too many to mention them all. For our purposes, I will mention few examples. First, the majority of citizens, the general public, those who form public opinion, the media, institutions of teaching and learning, politicians, political organizations, NGOs, national and international, mostly national but international, do not have disability rights and issues high in their agenda. Second, people with disabilities are not participating in sufficient numbers in centers of decision-making, local and national government, NGOs, legislative and executive bodies, courts, etc. Think of the parliament, the courts. Third, disability, I'm stopping on purpose. Costs. What? Money. It costs money for employers to make reasonable accommodations. In other words, to give their employees what they need in order to do their job. And here I should open a parenthesis very quickly and say, in terms of employing the people with disabilities, no one means that institutions or employers should employ people with disabilities that cannot do the job. They should employ them when they're qualified to do a job. And usually, they do the job so well that the reasonable accommodation cost is evened out and pays back. There's tons of scholarship on this issue, and luckily for you, I will not elaborate on that. But disability costs. It costs money for employers to make reasonable accommodations, and for the young, and money and determination, not just money, on the part of government to implement affirmative action, quotas in education, in employment, and so on. To achieve inclusion of people with disability in employment, in education, in social life, in entertainment, in exploring the internet, in travel, freedom of movement, and so on, determination is needed. Some people have to go out of their way to take action, affirmative action, more than is expected of them. But that doesn't happen most of the time. This determination can result from informed decision makers who try to learn, even when they don't know, and understand what disability really is, in the case of disability now, because I'm not ignoring or putting down any sense of diversity in general for other minorities. But as I said, the most ecumenical minority is the most ignored. And I think part of the reason is, as I told you, bias, fear for the condition, and cost. It's easy to say I don't mind women, and they don't mind them up to a point in the workplace, but they fought them in the beginning when they would take jobs from men. It's easier to say I don't have anything against a racial minority, because most of the time, if you live in another part of the world or neighborhood, you don't have direct contact. But when you think of disability, it's such a threatening possibility and prospect that nobody wants to think about it. Determination to implement laws which would offer to persons with disabilities equal opportunity, and forget about equal opportunity, that will never happen, some fair chance to life, right? We aim at equal opportunity, but you can never be equal on opportunity, but you cannot see and you're blind, and I have to spend twice as much time doing my work as anybody else. That didn't come into play when I was teaching. I think I was a good teacher. I think I'm a good speaker. I think I was a good, pardon me, I'm excellent in every way. But the work put for it is extraordinarily more than anybody else. I had to transcribe in Braille texts of ancient Greek, French, German, Latin, whatever. English, when I was studying English. And it had to be done by dictation, by volunteers who helped me, recorded material and other things, because even to this day, you do not go to any university bookstore in the States even and find a Braille book. You understand? There's different accommodations, but the work to be done is my two assistants of the moment, today, and I don't want them to blush, but Christina Georgiade and Steve Katsanis who are here know exactly now, since they are with me, what it takes to do something else. Today I had to read the proclamation of the National Confederation of Issues of Disability from Greece. I had to read the UN program and announcements to be ready to be on top of the situation. So they know that it takes more time to find it, to have them read it to me, and so on and so forth. Determination to implement laws which would offer to persons with disabilities equal opportunity to life could only come from people who are not themselves ignorant and prejudiced, or who are willing to improve on their ignorance and prejudice. As for the allocation of funds needed to implement even existing laws which are meant to benefit persons with disabilities, at the time of this national and international economic crisis, is at best difficult, at worst and usually impossible. Fellow citizens without disabilities may in normal times be compassionate, even without much information about the true condition of each disability. But at times of severe economic difficulties, the fellow human beings may even be resentful if a person with disability has some income, even some social welfare pension, or even if a priority is given to the person with disability in the line of a bank. I'm not exaggerating. Most people don't believe it when I say it, but all those things happen. At times of economic crisis, the government, the legislative body, the courts, everyone, even the media, have other priorities. At times like this, it is hard to remember that the future is unknown and fate is common for all. I will give some examples from the Greek from my work in from Greece, but I wish to emphasize that the same is true everywhere. In other words, human nature is the same, whether you're in the States, and I'm talking about the Western world primarily, but humans are humans everywhere. It is a question of degree of how barbaric our Western European civilization or American civilization, US civilization can be. It's a question of degree. It varies from period to period, of era to era, from country to country, from district to district, from person to person. However, the present cry, motto, effort from the European disability movement is to take action. They're aware that they're behind when compared to the US ADA, American with Disabilities Act, and its implementation. The European law and guidelines are influenced by the Americans with Disabilities Act, and the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities was influenced by that. And I will tell you something else. Now, I know you won't believe it, but I have it on my website, and you can check it. The report of the committee that I chaired in the Hellenic Parliament on Disability issued a report in May 2006 asking for the same things that the UN Convention on the Rights of People with Disability asked for in the proclamation and preamble and law articles in 2006 in December. It was the same text was ratified in 2008, 2010 by Europe, 2012 by Greece. We went ahead in the Hellenic Parliament, mind you, not because I was a prophet, of course I influenced them all, but because I was continuously in touch with developments in the US. In the decade of the 80s, as a very young professor in colleges and universities, and student there too, I worked for information provided to the US Senate and Congress to work for and pass eventually the ADA, the Americans with Disabilities Act. In the 90s here, I continued to be involved in the developments in Greece. And guess what? When my son, our son, went to the United States to study and then law in the American